It was a regular Tuesday morning as I hurried into the empty faculty lounge to grab my usual cup of coffee. I filled up my mug and sat down at one of the tables to look over my lesson notes. After a few quiet minutes, I heard an odd creaking noise coming from the corner of the room near the lockers. Figuring it was just the old heating system acting up, I tried to ignore it, but the creaking grew louder and louder until it was echoing through the lounge. Uneasy, I got up to investigate but found nothing unusual in the corner. The lights flickered and a chill swept over me before everything returned to normal. Perplexed, I went back to my work, keeping an eye on that corner. I never told anyone about the incident. There was no explanation for it, but an unsettling feeling lingered with me. A few weeks later, I was running late one morning. I rushed into the lounge, desperate for coffee. As I filled my mug, that familiar creaking sounded from the corner, getting progressively louder. I froze, remembering the last occurrence. When I cautiously walked over, the same thing happened. The temperature abruptly dropped, lights flickered, and the creaking stopped. I called out, but no one was there. With my hands shaking slightly, I hurried back to my classroom. I managed to avoid the lounge in the mornings for a couple weeks, but one frosty December day, I spilled coffee all over my shirt right before class. Cursing my luck, I had no choice but to dash into the lounge to grab paper towels. The room was deserted, lit only by the gray morning light coming through the windows. As I hurried in, the ominous creaking sounded from the corner. I froze, fear creeping up my spine. "Not today," I muttered and made a beeline for the paper towels. But the creaking intensified, echoing all around me. The hair on my arm stood up as the temperature plunged. I didn't wait another second. I ran from the faculty room faster than I've ever run in my life. Now I make sure to avoid the lounge in the mornings, grabbing coffee later once others have arrived. But sometimes as I walk past that corner, the lights throb ever so slightly. A faint chill raises the hair on my arms. It's almost as if whatever presence I encountered is still lingering there, waiting to send another warning I didn't understand. I quicken my pace and don't look back. The library at my high school always gave me the creeps. I know it sounds silly, but that dusty old room packed with endless books seemed like the perfect place for a ghost to hang out. Most kids avoided the library unless they had to print an assignment, but I actually didn't mind spending time there doing homework after school when it was quiet. Or at least, I used to not mind. That changed pretty quickly last fall. The library was huge, with tall bookshelves extending up towards the high ceiling. It was surprisingly empty for the after-school hours. It started with little things. I'd be sitting alone at a table, absorbed in an essay, when the sound of books toppling over would make me jump. I'd whip around to see what caused it, but nothing would be out of place. Or I'd suddenly get a whiff of something odd, like an old lady's perfume mixed with cleaning products. The scent would disappear as quickly as it came. I shrugged it off at first. Old buildings make weird noises. And don't all libraries have a musty chemical-like smell? But then the strangeness escalated. But a little while later, the feeling returned, even stronger this time. My heart was pounding as I frantically looked around again, but still saw no one. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I slammed my books shut and grabbed my things, power walking out of there as fast as I could. The strange feeling followed me home, but I convinced myself it was just nerves in the big empty library. The next day, I told myself I was being silly and returned to the library after class to keep working. I was working on a history project in the nonfiction section one evening when the lights flickered wildly overhead. I glanced up, then felt a chill down my spine as the book I had been holding slammed shut right in front of me, as if pushed by an invisible hand. I sat there paralyzed, listening to the buzzing lights. Then hurried footsteps echoed down the aisle, coming straight for me. I grabbed my backpack and raced out of there like my life depended on it. I was seriously freaked after that encounter. I told my friends about the footsteps and they teased me about ghosts. I stopped spending time in the library after school, but I couldn't avoid it altogether, since we had study hall there twice a week. Sitting in study hall, I tried to keep my head down, but the creepiness continued. I'd hear whimpering cries that no one else seemed to notice, or I'd smell that odd perfume and feel freezing cold air swirl around me, even with the heat blasting. The final straw came one day when I felt a bony hand firmly grasp my shoulder from behind. I screamed, but when I turned around, no one was there. That's when I knew for sure the library was haunted. My friends still laugh it off as an overactive imagination, but I can't ignore the way my heart races every time I have to go in there. I'm just counting down the days until I graduate and never have to step foot in that creepy building again. Whoever the ghost is, they can have the library. I sure don't want anything to do with it. I can't forget what happened to me that night in the school laboratory. It haunts me to this day. It was late one night when I stayed after school to finish an experiment in the chemistry lab. I was alone in the large, dimly lit room, carefully measuring chemicals and recording data. The old pipes in the walls creaked and groaned ominously. I shivered, though the room wasn't cold. This lab always gave me the creeps, especially when I was here alone at night. I tried to focus on titrating the solution, but couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I heard a faint scraping noise coming from the supply closet behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. I laughed nervously to myself. "Get a grip," I muttered. Turning back to my experiment, I let out a yelp as all the beakers and test tubes on the counter suddenly crashed to the floor. Glass shards and spilled chemicals covered the tile. My heart pounded as I gaped at the mess. There was no way that could have happened naturally. The scraping sound came again, louder this time, from inside the supply closet. This was no creaky pipe or building settling. Something was in there. I grabbed my backpack and rushed for the door, desperate to get out of there. To my horror, it wouldn't budge no matter how hard I pulled. A cold, sinister laugh echoed through the lab. I was trapped. Spinning around, I searched wildly for the source of the laughter. "Who's there?" I called out shakily. "This isn't funny." Something was in that supply closet, something that didn't want me there. My heart raced, my palms grew sweaty. I had to get out. Mustering all my strength, I threw my shoulder against the exit door. It burst open. I raced down the empty halls and out of the building, not looking back. I have no idea what was in that lab with me, and I never want to find out. All I know is that room was haunted. After that night, I heard rumors that other students had experienced strange occurrences in that same lab over the years. Whispers of an angry ghost who wanders the room late at night. But I try not to think about those stories. What happened to me was real, and it's an experience I'll never forget.